Several months ago, we started an important series titled The 70 Most Difficult Questions in Judaism. There are many issues that people are bothered by, that they don't understand. The problem is that if they live their life without seeking an answer, without seeking an explanation, it is a shame, because the entire outcome of one's life could depend on if he had a clear understanding of what life is all about, a life without doubts, without questions, what we call a peace of mind concerning some very difficult issues that all of us from time to time encounter in our lives: challenges, wars, persecutions, inquisitions, etc. Throughout the history of the Jewish people, there's been many challenges, many questions, many things that were not very well understood, why Hashem does certain things in a certain way. But Baruch Hashem, we have the Torah, we have some of the answers, some of the explanations, and it's important to learn about them. And that's what we're doing over here, is trying to understand as much as possible why certain things happen. We went into a mini-series, a series dealing with soulmates. That is one of the questions that we asked. What is a soulmate? How does one identify who his soulmate is? And this is a very important area, especially in our generation, because unfortunately there's so many singles. So we spent several weeks on this topic, including one lecture that was devoted just to answer the question why there are so many singles today. And today what we're going to do is we're going to cover another important area that has to do with soulmates, how to make it happen. In other words, some people say, of course I want to get married, of course I'm looking for my soulmate. What do I need to do to make it happen sooner than later? We spoke about the problems of why people are not getting married, why people are being delayed in finding their soulmate. But today we're going to cover those individuals who have really made an effort. Those who have not made any effort, well, they are to blame. They haven't tried, or they did not want to. Today we're only going to cover those who are truly, sincerely trying to do their best to find their soulmate, and they haven't. They haven't succeeded. What is it that we can share with them that perhaps can help them? I handed out a powerful prayer that was composed by great tzaddikim for men and for women, for those who are single, and some of those prayers could even be said by the parents of the singles. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on. Why is it an important prayer? In other words, why this prayer can make a difference. But just to give you a little bit of an introduction on this topic of marriages, how they come about, I'm going to share with you a famous midrash. In the midrash it says that a very prominent Roman woman, wealthy Roman woman, a matronita, confronted Rabbi Yossi ben Halafta and asked him, Rabbi, God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh day. Okay, what is he doing now? He finished creating the world. What does he have to do now? So the rabbi tells her, he's mezavek zivugim. He puts people together. Singles. And believe me, the rabbi tells her, it's not an easy job to match up people. So the matronita tells the rabbi, what are you talking about? That's very easy for me to do. I have many servants, male and female. I'm going to show you how I can put them together, how I can be a matchmaker. And she selected 1,000 servants, men and women, and she said, you marry her, you marry her, you marry him. And a day or so later, many came back. This one had a black and blue mark, a black eye, was punched in the face. This one was crippled. This one was all banged up. Everyone was complaining about this match. She's not for me, he's not for her. And she had to admit to the rabbi, I guess there's something that God does that is right, that I couldn't figure out. I thought I can easily put people together, it will work. Apparently not. Not everybody goes well together with each other. There are some that are more compatible, there are some that are less compatible, and then there's always one perfect match that we call the zivug, the soulmate. And Hashem, who knows the root of the soul of each individual, every human being, He's the one that knows perfectly who goes with whom. What was this whole argument about? What was this discussion about? I mean, she did not know that God does certain things, that He takes care of zivugim. I mean, she wasn't completely ignorant. It was more of a philosophical argument. There were many philosophers who believed in the Creator, that God created the world. But who's to say that He continues to supervise what is going on today? Maybe He's no longer around, He's no longer watching, He doesn't care. And that is how they explain why so many evil people succeed and many righteous people are not doing well. They're righteous, they're good, they're kind, and they have such a terrible mazal. So many philosophers subscribe to this philosophy, to this kind of belief, that God created the world. It makes sense that there's a designer to this world. It just didn't happen by itself, but who's to say that He continuously manages everything that goes on in this world? And the rabbi tells her, no, Hashem ashgiach b'ashgacha peratit. Not only is there ashgacha klalit, which means divine providence or supervision over the entire world as a whole, that everything all the planets rotate on their axis, all the climate, the way it works, the beautiful harmony that exists. Not only is there ashgacha klalit, a general ashgacha, and that chas v'shalom, God forbid, if He was to withdraw His supervision of the world, everything would cease to exist. So there continues to be hashgacha klalit, the general supervision. But the rabbi tells us not only is there such an hashgacha, there's also hashgacha peratit. Peratit means very specific. To every human being, He's aware of every individual, what he or she is doing, what he or she needs. And the greatest need of all is a soulmate. The greatest need of all is a partner. Because that is the purpose of the whole creation, is for there to be procreation, for there to be continuity. And that continuity is built into creation, that every animal, just about everything in this world, procreates, male and female, and they do it very similarly, and that's very interesting, that it's all by design. So if Hashem wants people to continue to procreate, to be together, to have a family, obviously He has to put people together that are the best match for each other. Otherwise, they'd be arguing with each other, they wouldn't get along. And for human beings, it's much harder than for animals, because we have free will. Animals have instincts. They just know what they need to do by instinct. But human beings have the ability to rebel, they have the ability to not listen, they have the ability to be selfish. All of these things don't exist in animals, so it's more complicated. Depending on the upbringing of the man, depending on the home he comes from, he could become very abusive, depending on where he grew up. He may have a totally different mindset, a different mentality than his wife. They grew up in very, very different surroundings. So Hashem has to find, He doesn't really have to find, He's aware, He knows who those two are that are compatible and that go well together. And He's the one that puts them together. The pasuk, the verse in Tehillim that spells this out very clearly, is as follows. Elokim moshiv yahidim baita. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that puts those who are yahidim, they are singles, together into one home. What does that mean? It means that Hashem is the one that brings two people together. Even if one is in New Zealand and one is in Hawaii, they will somehow think of taking the same cruise to the Caribbean at the same time, and that is where they will meet. In other words, He takes people who are in opposite ends of the world. He's the one that can do it. And there are many, many stories that you may have heard or read where people have found each other out of nowhere. That is all indicative, sheyesh mashgiach, that there is one who is supervising, who's making this happen. That's the beginning of the pasuk. The second part of the pasuk says, Motzi asirim. David HaMelech describes taking out prisoners as matchmaking, because there are some who are, in a way, constricted or limited, who feel that it's just too difficult. Hashem releases them. He's the one that brings them out from their prison, and He's the one that brings them together. He does it bekosharot. What does it mean bekosharot? Motzi asirim bekosharot. Kosharot means at the proper time, whenever it's kasher. Some people would like to get married at a certain time, but Hashem says it's not kasher at this time. Your spouse or your husband or your wife is still learning, is still maturing. They're not prepared yet. It will take time. Hashem knows when is the kosher time. Vakosharot. Vakosharot also means bechi veshirot. It's a composition of two words, with laughter or with tears, or I should say with tears and with song. What does that mean? Rabbis explain that the Kadosh Baruch Hu sometimes brings two people together even if they don't like it, even if they're not so convinced they're for each other. And in the end, what happens? Some cry and some sing. Some are happy and some are not. Why did He put them together? Only He knows. In other words, it's not always going to be a happy ending. Sometimes people need to come together because that is what Hashem wanted, that these two people should come together. The children need to come out. Certain neshamot have to come out from this union. And in the end, of course, it may break up. In the end, it may not be too comfortable. But nevertheless, that is still a package deal that came about from Hashemayim. It did not happen randomly by itself. However, the last part of the pasuk is what most people ignore. Most people are unaware of the last part of the pasuk that says, Ach sorerim yishkenu tzechicha, or shachenu tzechicha. Those who are rebellious, sorerim, they will reside and they will remain in the desert. In other words, they will not be dealt with. There are some individuals who are still single today because they have been abandoned. What does it mean of being abandoned? Because of some of their ma'asim, because of some of their deeds, because of their behavior, because of the things they do, Hashem simply has looked away from them and is not helping them. There are some individuals, and that I hope not too many, but there are some who have simply been let go. It doesn't mean that they have no chance. It doesn't mean that they can never get married. But based on the present situation that they're in, that they're totally uninterested, they're more focused on making money, etc., Hashem says, you know what, I'm not going to bother him. He's much more into money than anything else. Even if I were to give him his true soulmate, it will self-destruct. Why? Because his girl or his wife or his soulmate is such a decent person, such a nice person. If I put her together with this man, he's an animal the way he is right now. It's gonna self-destroy. So sometimes there are certain rebellious Sorerim individuals who are left behind. Hashem says, you know what? I cannot put you together with anybody right now. It's going to all fall apart. So what we've covered right now so far is something that we've mentioned in the past many times, that all the zivugim, for the most part, occur through the hand of Hashem. But what do we do with those who have not yet found? And I chose the age of 35 because 35 represents halfway through one's life. Average life of 70 years. So if you're older than 35 and you've been actively pursuing, remember, actively pursuing getting married and you still haven't found, then what can we do to help you? I want to just remind you that we're not going to give too much advice to those who are picky, because that we've already covered. The dangers of being overly picky, and I'm going to share with you an incredible story towards the end of what it means to be picky. But that we've already covered. I just want to re-emphasize is that I'm assuming that this individual who's been actively pursuing his soulmate has not been too picky. Because if you're too picky, then there you have one of your answers, or one of the reasons of why you haven't found, is because you've been too picky. And it may just be that when you were 23 or 24, you actually met up with her or with him, but you just said no. She's not tall enough, or he doesn't have enough money. You know, in the Persian community, you have to be at least a dentist. You know, that's what they tell me. You know, if you're not a doctor or a dentist, if you don't have a certain profession, they're not going to look at you. You know, that's being closed-minded. You really have to be, when it comes to shidduchim, you have to be open-minded. Even though you are entitled to have certain ideas and preferences, but who's to say that the one that is you're going to marry, the one that's the best match for you, has every little thing you want. And I'm going to be honest with you. Imagine you're a woman, okay? You're a woman, and all you want, of course, is a nice-looking, handsome man who will be able to support you, who has a good education, coming from a good family. So far, so good, right? Handsome, well, he has to be attractive. It has to be something that you feel comfortable with. Good family, that's reasonable. Can support you, or at least he has to have an idea of what he wants to do. How is he going to support you? Good character. I mean, all of this is normal. No, I want him to buy me a house in Beverly Hills. That's that's unreasonable. You have to be very careful between what is reasonable and what is unreasonable. No, if he's not a doctor, it's out of the question. What if everything else except for his profession is right? Okay, everything so far works out well. They go on a date. There is attraction. There's chemistry. Families are good. And now, the Khatan tells the Kala, we're only going to have a DJ. We're not going to have a Persian singer. Yeah. We're not going to spend $10,000 to bring a singer. We're only going to have a DJ. Are you going to break up the whole thing just because of that? Some people would. And you know what? They may be losing their soulmate. The best match, that young man who wanted a DJ, who wanted a simple wedding for 200 people and not invite the entire community, it would have been a decent man. You would have lived with him for 55, 65 years. You would have had beautiful children together. He would have respected you. Imagine going to marry the guy who's going to give you a $15,000 singer and invite 650 people and abuses you, hits you, curses at you. Is that what you want? You prefer the singer and all the music and all the food and all the guests? But the man is not a mensch, as we say in Yiddish. He's not a decent human being. He doesn't know how to respect his wife. Is that what you want? But you have all this, and people still think, oh, what are people going to talk about me? What are they going to say in the community if I don't invite them? Who cares? Who cares what people are going to say? Don't you care about yourself, about your family, about your marriage? Isn't that more important? They're going to forget about you the next day. So you have to be very careful. And I don't want to repeat what we've already covered. Being picky is very, very dangerous because you may be losing out by being picky. Another person who may be losing out is one who postpones indefinitely. I got to go to college. I got to get my PhD first. That's going to take me 6 to 8 years. I got to pass the bar. Okay, fine. How long does it take to pass the bar? But what if you fail the first time? No, I got to take an exam again. You think she's going to wait for you? She's not going to wait. Your soulmate is probably going to get married to the first man that she finds that is decent, is nice, and if Hashem feels that they're somewhat compatible, Hashem says, we're not going to wait for the real one. It's not fair for her, or it's not fair for him if she's doing it the same thing. So you see what I mean? Postponement or being picky is not good. The third area, what we're talking about right now is process of elimination. We're talking about an individual who's 32 years old, 33, or more. And he wants to know what happened, okay? Process of elimination. He was not picky, okay? Because if he was, then he's to blame. It does not mean that he should give up hope. That's it. There's nothing else. I was picky. I lost it. There's no more. No, there is still somebody out there that's for you, okay? But we have to eliminate him for now. So he was not picky. He did not postpone indefinitely. He never went to college. He started working, so he did not push it off. He wanted to get married, all right? What is the third possibility that he has to ask himself? Perhaps he's doing something wrong. Perhaps he's not behaving himself. Perhaps he cheats people. He's not an honest man. He uses foul language. There's various activities or various maasim or deeds that, God forbid, if a person engages in them, it causes accusations on him. And those accusations basically are obstacles in his way of finding his true soulmate. One soulmate is a gift. Like they tell you here in California and probably most states in this country, that a driver's license is not a right, it's a privilege. Did you hear that? A driver's license is not a right. Just because you turn 16 doesn't mean you're entitled to get a driver's license. It's a privilege. You have to earn it. You have to pass the exam and prove it that you know how to drive. Same thing with zivugim. Hashem says, I'd love you to start your life together with the best person possible, but you have to earn it. I'm not just going to give it to you automatically. You may ruin it. What good is it that you ruin a beautiful, potential, good relationship? So I have to assume that this individual who's in his late 30s or wherever has examined his deeds, and there's nothing that he can find that is terrible. It's so terrible that there will be some terrible accusation against him. So we've eliminated three important possibility or causes that may be interfering. One, person who's been very picky, one who's been pushing it off unnecessarily, or one who's doing something not right. I'm assuming also that the individual, again, has made a real effort. And the reason why I add this effort detail is for the following reason. The Midrash says some men are very lucky. They're working so hard, they don't have time to date. What does Hashem do? Hashem says, you know what, don't worry about it. I'm going to send her knocking on your door. That's great. You don't have to go out. You don't have to make phone calls. You don't even have the time to date. Hashem has pity on you. He wants you to get married and settled. He sends her knocking on your door. It doesn't have to be the girl. It could be the girl's mother. It could be the girl's aunt. Right? Somehow, they're going to come to you. You know who this happened with? Yitzchak. Rivka came to Yitzchak. But some people are not so lucky. Yaakov has to go find Rachel. He has to travel. So the Midrash says there's all kinds of zivugim. Some go to their zivug, some of them, their zivug comes to them. It all depends on what Hashem's plan is for you. Okay, so we're assuming that the individual has made a real effort because he can't rely on miracles she's going to come to be. Now, I want to repeat to those who were not here in previous lectures another important point, and that is that some delays are intended me'ashamayim. It could be a delay because of one's mazal. He's born in a certain mazal that means that he's going to get married a little bit later. Or it could be that Hashem has some reason of why he should get married late. What's a good reason? What is an example of a reason of why he needs to get married late? I gave you several examples. One was during the time of the Holocaust, many Jews were killed. But Baruch Hashem, some men survived. What if those men who survived lost their soulmates in Auschwitz? Hashem says, you know what, don't worry, I'm going to get you somebody else. But she's still 14 years old right now. You're going to have to wait 5, 6, 7 years until she grows up. That one is the next best match for you. But she's too young. So you have a man, who's perhaps in his late 20s or late 30s or whatever, who has to wait a couple more years because the other one is gone. The other one is perhaps married to someone else. And that could happen. Why? Because he was too picky. She got married to someone else. Hashem said, okay, now you, Baruch Hashem, you're doing teshuvah. Now you're repenting. Now you've learned your lesson. Now you want to get married. Okay, I got to find you somebody else. Not necessarily the other one. So you got to wait. Maybe the right one right now is not ready yet. Or maybe you're not ready. So Hashem sometimes delays it for reasons that only He knows. So this was all more or less of an introduction. We're dealing with an individual who has done everything, has examined himself, nothing wrong, and he's tried, he's contacted matchmakers. He's even gone to Sayu and Sinai on the internet, right? Or to Frumster. He's tried everything. How do we help him? So tonight I'm going to introduce to you an interesting Kabbalistic concept that you may have heard, but you perhaps never understood what it is. It's called a Segulot. Anybody here know what a Segulot is? It's a difficult word to translate, but it basically means a remedy of sorts that works with metaphysical powers. It's a little fancy English, but I think most of you understand what metaphysical is. Supernatural, spiritual, not physical, not your regular stuff. Metaphysical, it's called in English. Powers, a remedy of sorts, something that can help us in a metaphysical way. That's called a Segulot. Now this is a very, very interesting area because Even gemstones have Segulot. And I'm going to talk about that. The Segulot of an emerald, the Segulot of a ruby, the Segulot of a topaz. People sell semi-precious and precious stones, and all they think is about the money. What they're going to get for 2 carats, 3 carats, clean, not clean. They don't realize that every stone has certain Segulot, certain powers, other than the beauty of the stone, other than to be used in a ring. That's Segulot. Segulot means certain powers that exist out there that are metaphysical in nature that can be used to remedy or to help us in a certain situation. Then there's another concept called the Kemiah. And I'm just introducing you to some of these concepts so you should know the difference between them. Have you heard of a Kemiah? Kemiah in English is an amulet that people wear. It's written on a cloth, on a piece of parchment like a mezuzah. It could be a few letters. It could be many words. That's called a Kemiah. What's a Kemiah? A Kemiah basically contains names of malachim, of angels, contains certain prayers that are very, very concentrated, very directed to something very specific. And they, if you wear them, they act as a constant prayer or a constant request. I don't want to compare it, but just I want to share with you something cute. But it's not a real comparison. In Tibet, you know where Tibet is, right? In Western China, the Tibetans are not like the Chinese. They have a different lifestyle, different language, different culture. They have something similar to the Kemiah that they put in a rattle. They write it on a piece of paper, and they put it inside this rattle, and they rattle it. So the prayer that is in there, every single time they do this, they rattle, it's like their prayer is being repeated. Instead of them saying the words, they do this all the time, and the prayer inside is turning around and around and around. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Whether it helps or not, I don't know. But what we have is a Kemiah that if you wear it, that means you have it on you all the time. Instead of saying Shira Ma'alot, Shira Ma'alot, Shira Ma'alot, right, all the time, you have whatever it contains on you all the time. There are certain Kemiot that you actually put into the water, and whatever words are in the Kemiah are erased into the waters, and you drink it. And there's all sorts of Kemiot for all sorts of purposes. Women who can't get pregnant, women who have difficult childbirth, people who have difficulty with Ain Hara, the evil eye, which I'll talk about next. What kind of a Kemiah that is. All sorts of Kemiot that help because of certain letters that were written down on this parchment, that either you wear them, you erase it into the water, or whatever. It's a powerful prayer, and it may help on condition that it is accurate, that it's been tested, and that it was written by one who's knowledgeable, who knows how to write it with the proper kavanot. If all of what I just said is met in writing the Kemiah, that Kemiah could be effective. If it's a plain piece of paper, like some mezuzot on people's door have been found to contain simple piece of paper that was Xeroxed, you know, you have to check your mezuzot that you were not sold a piece of paper, that it's a real mezuzah, real klaf, kosher. So a Kemiah that is done properly can be effective for a variety of things. A Segulot, the way the Segulot, however, works, as opposed to the Kemiah, is the Segulot, by doing certain things or saying certain things, as opposed to wearing it, it connects you in a very powerful way to whatever it is that you're requesting or that you need on a spiritual frequency. You know what frequencies are? Tadarim, as we call them in Hebrew. There's all sorts of waves, frequencies, radio, microwave. So look at it that way, that the Segulot that is being said, not that which is written, but that which is being said or done, somehow connects you, the way it will help you, and we're going to talk about what those Segulot are soon, but the way it is going to help an individual who performs it or says it, is that it's going to connect him in a spiritual way. It's going to put him in touch with a different frequency, that apparently, once he's on that frequency, he's able to connect to whatever it is that he needs to connect to. That's what Segulot is, and that's how it works. There's a third area that we're not going to talk about at all, that I mentioned a little bit in the past, is Kabbalah Ma'asit, or applied Kabbalah, which nobody basically does today. It's very dangerous stuff. And that involves Hashba'at Malachim, that involves using the help of angels by calling onto them. And we're not going to talk about it. I'm not going to tell you what to do or how to do it, because it's dangerous. If you're not on the right level, if you're not completely clean and pure, you cannot involve yourself in this kind of things. That's called applied Kabbalah, or Kabbalat Ma'asi, where they actually use names to perform all sorts of things. But these exist. I just wanted you to become familiar with them. This exists, and many things were performed using Kabbalah Ma'asid, but not in our generation, unless one is looking for trouble. So we're going to talk about Segulot. Segulot is easy. Segulot is something that everybody can do on your own. And Segulot can be very helpful. For who? For some individuals. It does not mean, and I do not guarantee here, that the Segulot that I will share with you will help every single one of you. Because it all depends on what the symptom is, what the cause of the problem is. Some things are cured by Segulah. Some things can be cured by the blessing of a big tzaddik and rabbi. Some things can be cured by simple prayer. Some things can be cured by a commitment that the Jew made. Give an example. Let's say they're suing you in court. And it's a completely false accusation. It's a setup. You've been framed. Still, you could end up sitting in jail for 20 years. People were just let out of jail now after 18 years, only because they have DNA today. Oh, we figured out that it wasn't you after all, but the guy was rotting in jail for the past 18 years. Now we know, Baruch Hashem, we know that everything is Meshamayim. Nothing is coincidental. Nothing happens by chance. And the man had to sit. Whether he sues and collects from the city, I don't know. He probably is going to get something for it. But we want to avoid that. Am Yisrael is very, very sensitive. Is always very much aware, if they're, of course, attached to the Torah, that if something happens to an individual, it's min hashamayim. If a person is being pursued, if a person has troubles that do not make sense, it's not your regular ups and downs in the economy. Oh, how come I'm not, selling? How come I'm not doing as well? It could be the economy. You're not to blame. Many people are not doing well. If it's not the economy, if it's not one's mazal of ups and downs, it could be a kitrug, an accusation. And when there's an accusation, it means that Hashem is sending you a signal. Perhaps, get your act together. You can avoid this big problem. But I'm already into this problem. Even if you're into the problem, anytime there's a jury, you don't know what the outcome will be. And even if it's not a jury, it's a judge. Lev melachim v'sarim b'yad Hashem. Mishle tells us, Shlomo Melech tells us, remember the hearts of kings and princes is in the hands of Hashem. If kings are in the hands of Hashem, so are the judges. You think they decide on their own? Whatever Hashem puts into their mind, that's what they decide. Even if there's a lot of evidence, if the glove does not fit, right? Remember that? The glove doesn't fit. Now, there is corruption too. We're not going to talk about the corruption that exists in certain places. Nevertheless, everything is in the hands of Hashem. So what does one do when he sees the situation? He can come out of it. He sees that perhaps there's an accusation against him. He has to take upon himself some commitment. Rabbis tell us it's not a good idea to make nedarim, vows. To make a promise. If you don't keep your promise, that's a big sin. But when a person is be'et sarah, when his ship is sinking in the sea, when he's drowning, he has nothing to lose. You're nothing to lose. Then make a neder. Hashem, if you get me out of this situation, I promise you that this is what I will do. This is what I commit myself. And that commitment sometimes is the most powerful Segulot of all. I wouldn't even call it a Segulot. That is the most powerful thing that a person can do to get him out of a terrible situation. So a commitment is something that a person can always do. And I'm going to give you a few examples of what a person can say or do that can help him find his soulmate. So one kind of Segulot that exists is to remove any accusation. I just said before that not everybody can be helped with every segula. Some people need something else other than a segula, but there are segulot that deal specifically with kitrugim, with accusations. So if we are able to figure it out somehow, that there's some terrible accusation against somebody, there are certain segulot, certain things a person can do, lesalek et hamekatreg, to remove that accusation. That's one kind of segula, removal of the accusation. Another kind of segula is, as I mentioned before, be'avanim u'tzmachim, in gems and in plants and certain herbs. And that is not a chidush. I'm sure most of you have heard and know that there are certain herbs out there, certain plants that have certain characteristics that have medicinal value. What do you think they take the Tylenol, or I should say the aspirin from? It all comes from plants. So they went to the source. Instead of giving you something artificial, chemical, they know, they've found out, they've discovered that certain things have certain characteristics. So certain plants and certain gems, certain stones have certain segulot, certain powers that can cure, that can heal, that can be effective in many, many ways. There's a segula that is very, very powerful for shemirah, to protect one. Protect against what? Protect against kishufim, witchcraft, protect against evil eyes, protect you against the enemies, right? You're having enemies, people are causing you a lot of trouble, you have some neighbor that is giving you a hard time. There's all sorts of segulot on how to deal with these kind of problems, that they should protect you from all that is evil. And then you have prayers, certain prayers that are very concentrated, that are specifically for either zivugim or for parnasah, that have that koach, that have that power to help one achieve what he's trying to achieve. And that is what I gave out for you. For those of you who came later, we still have, for men and for women, a special prayer. And there are various prayers. The one that I copied is one of the more common prayers that are used for those who are very much interested in finding their soulmate, and they've tried very hard and they haven't found. I highly recommend saying that prayer. Why is the prayer good? Why is the prayer so important? Especially these prayers, because these prayers, what they do for us is they allow us to organize our thoughts. The reason why Sidur, the prayer book, is called Sidur, because everything is organized. People do not have the language today to communicate with God and to verbalize their thoughts and feelings properly. So the rabbis did us a big favor. They composed the Sidur, where they organize what we should say in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. These powerful prayers are concentrated in that they have all the words we need to properly communicate with Hashem. Because we don't want to say the wrong things. We want to say the right things. So that's what these prayers have. The right words. They allow us, therefore, to focus on the right thing. They, of course, have the ability to awaken rachamim, compassion. And more than anything else, they always remind us that the zivug, or the request that we're making, is in His hands. So that's why these prayers are important. They are always intended to remind us that we should turn to Him. They have the ability to awaken compassion and pity on us. And they are very focused. So we can concentrate only on that thing specific and using the right words. So what I'm going to do right now is going to go through a list of a few segulot. Only a few, because I've covered many, many segulot in another lecture called Interpersonal Relationships, lecture number 4. But if you want to hear it, is online in EnglishTorahTapes.com. I don't remember which number is on his list on their website, but there's a whole bunch of segulot, but we'll cover some of them right now too. Or what you can do that will hopefully help. It may not, because it may be that the problem is something else. Okay, but it definitely could help those who have tried everything else. This may be it. One segula is to read, for the men especially, to read the Shirat Hayam, the Az Yashir Moshe, every day with kavanah and with simcha, with happiness, every single day. That prayer of Shirat Hayam, Az Yashir Moshe, to sing it, to say it with to say it with kavanah, has a segula. It has that power of connecting you on that higher frequency. Birkat HaLevana or Kiddush HaLevana B'Chavana is also very powerful. Now, Birkat HaLevana, which is the prayer that we do once a month, the men, outside for the new moon, that can also be said by the father of the girl, the father of the boy. That is a very, very, very special prayer that is done once a month, Birkat HaLevana, also done with Kavanah. You were going to ask something? Yeah.
Why specifically as Yashir? I mean, there's so many Segulot.
There are quite a few. When I'm sharing with you the ones that have a certain power, right? To connect you on that spiritual frequency. For some reason that I don't know myself, it works. You know, it's been written down, and it's worth trying out. Because if it's done properly, it just has that power to connect you on that frequency. Going to the Kotel HaMaravi, going to the Western Wall for 40 days straight. Many of you possibly have heard of this one. Some have tried it. They've come back after 80 days and they haven't seen him yet. They haven't found her yet. I did say, right, that it's not a guarantee. It all depends what the reason for the delay is. There are quite a few reasons of why that individual is being delayed. But if that delay can be helped through a Segulot, this is a very powerful Segulot. Another one is saying 40 days in a row, Shir HaShirim. Also, it may help. Another Segulot, giving charity, specifically Leilui Nishmat Rabbi Meir Balanes. And when you're giving the tzedakah, you should say the prayer Elahad Meir Aneni, Elahad Meir Aneni, Elahad Meir Aneni 3 times. And ask, of course, what you need. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu should, B'zchut, the Tana, should make it easier for you to find your zivug. Another very beautiful and powerful Segulot is to give tzedakah specifically for Hachnasat Kala, for those who need money to marry off their children. They don't have enough money to marry off their children, and if you support them or help them get married, marry off their children, that is also has a tzedakah is important, right? But this tzedakah is much more concentrated. It's being done specifically for that reason. And what does that do upstairs? Wow, he's helping others get married. He needs it himself. You see how these things work? It's very specific charity for certain cause that is identical to what he needs. It somehow may have the desired effect of helping him. Now there's a very interesting Segulot for young girls, older girls too, to open the door for Eliyahu Navi on the Leil HaSeder. You know when we open the door, Shfoch Hamatcha Lagoyim, we pour the cup. Let the girl who wants to get married, who's of marriageable age, of course, open up the door. This can also help. Now here I'm going to tell you one that is very, very unique, that you probably never heard of, and it's for the men. If you know somebody in your family who's, a young man, an older gentleman who's still single, during Chol HaMoed of Pesach, take the zro'ah. In the ki'ara that we prepare a little bit of the maror, matzah, right? Take the zro'ah. The zro'ah is that piece of chicken bone or whatever it is that you use that's roasted, zecher lekorban Pesach. Take that small piece of zro'ah and put it in his jacket without him knowing about it. Okay? When he discovers it, B'ezrat Hashem, he will become engaged. That's a Segulot. Okay? So now you know what to do this Pesach. Prayer is very powerful, but you know that the prayer of Aseret Yemei Teshuvah is even more powerful. Yeshut Hashem b'matze'o. Call out to Hashem when He's around. He's always around, but He's more around and more listening and more attentive during the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So during that time, if you pray especially for your zivug, that is the most propitious time of the year for prayer for zivug. One should pray for zivug every day. But during the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, pray a whole day if you can. That is the most powerful time to pray. Prayer on or at the kivrei of tzaddikim, the graves of tzaddikim is also something known to help. Tzaddikim are greater in their death than they are when they were alive. And that could be very, very effective too. Now let me tell you why prayer can make a big difference. The Chazon Ish, Zecher Tzadik Levrach, used to say as follows. A lot of people do all sorts of things to try to improve their chances for parnasah, for zivugim, for children. They do things. And that is the right thing to do. Is you try, and that's called ishtadlut in Hebrew. And what the ishtadlut or the effort accomplishes is zemeorer rachamim. It could really awaken pity on you. And one should never give up hope, never. Continue to try everything. However, the reason why prayer is even more powerful than trying is because prayer has the ability to change situations, whereas the effort cannot. Because if somebody's mazal is blocked for some reason, it's blocked for whatever reason. There's all sorts of reasons for that. No matter what he tries, nothing's going to work. But if he prays to Hashem, Hashem can remove all the blocks and obstacles. Prayer can change a situation. Somebody lost his ivug. He can look around the whole world. He can try as much as he can. He may not find, but if he prays, that prayer might turn things around for him. So prayer is always going to be much more powerful and more effective than any effort that he makes. You know, sometimes you think you can buy something with money. Not necessarily. You can't buy love with money. You know, you think you could, but prayer can do it. Prayer is much more, therefore, effective than making efforts. The Sefer Hasidim brings down something very important that parents should never forget to have their kids in mind when they pray. And when they pray, they should ask Hashem that their kids should marry somebody good, from a good family, not just anybody. So that is a prayer that for the parents to also have in mind, not just for the children. Why should the parents also pray? Everybody knows, I think, the story of Yaakov and Rachel, or Rivka and Yitzchak, how their marriage came together, right? It is obvious that it came from Shamayim, right? That worked easily. Somehow it just happened. What part of their life did not work easily? Children. Right? Children. Children did not come easy to them. They had to pray for it. All right. Was there a difference in the prayer between Rivka and Yitzchak? Rabbis tell us yes. Anybody know what the difference between the prayer of Rivka and Yitzchak was? Yes. Go ahead.
She was Tzaddik ben Rashayin and he was Tzaddik ben Tzaddik.
Right. Yitzchak was the Tzaddik ben Tzaddik. His prayer was answered almost immediately. She was a Tzaddiket, but she was the daughter of Betuel, a Rasha. Her prayer, even though eventually it was accepted, it was not accepted as fast as Yitzchak. The child on his own may not be too effective with his prayers, but if his parents are more tzaddikim and they have parents who were tzaddikim, then you have the Zechut Avot. One should always pray for his children, because it could be that together the combination of all the prayers are going to help. A very important point that I always stress for both men and women is that when you pray, if you want your prayers to have more chances, is the prayer should be L'Shem Shamayim. Hashem, you know why I want to get married? I want to get married because I want to have a Jewish home. I want to have children that will be your servants. Hashem says, oh, he's not selfish. He's being very unselfish. He wants to do the mitzvah. He wants to have a home where he can perform the mitzvot. That's different. I'm going to help him accomplish that. He's not thinking of himself, I just want company. I just want a girlfriend. I just want a boyfriend. I just want somebody because that's what everybody else is doing. I want something that is right for me because I want to be able to build a Jewish home. If one has those ideas in mind, and he means it, or she means it sincerely, and Hashem knows and reads our thoughts and our feelings, then that is also much more powerful and has better chances of being effective. Thinking about the real purpose of marriage, thinking about doing so l'shem shamayim, and of course intending to do so. Okay, how should one pray? How should the prayer come about? I saw a beautiful a poem that was composed by a Jewish poet many years ago. And this is what he wrote. It all rhymes beautifully. Matayat tefillah nishma'at. When is the prayer heard? Be'et hanefesh nichna'at. When the nefesh, when the spirit is humbled. Ve'a'ain doma'at. And the eyes begin to tear. Ve'atla'a lekirot halev noga'at. And the troubles are touching the bottom of one's heart. These are the three kelim, I guess we can call them, tools that we need in putting together a prayer. That the spirit is humbled, that the eyes are tearing, and that the problem, whatever it is affecting us from the bottom of our heart. In other words, it's really, really disturbing us. I told you once a story, and I'll repeat it for those who haven't heard it. When I was in Sfat, about 28 years ago, I was by the kever of my great-great-great-great-grandfather, the Bet Yosef, and a gentleman comes over to me in Hebrew and tells me, what can I do? Yesh li lev mi even. I have a heart made out of stone. I can't cry. So I was a young man then. I couldn't help him. But I went home and I said to myself, that's strange. I know women cry much more easily than men. But if somebody wants to cry, what's the big deal? You know? Why couldn't he bring himself to cry? And my conclusion was, every human being is capable of crying. But it has to bother you. Whatever it is that's on your mind, it really has to bother you. If it does not bother you enough, then you're not going to bring yourself to tears. Whatever he was saying, whatever he was asking from the kever, from the tzaddik, obviously he wanted something, he needed something. But it did not bother him so much. If it really, really pains you, if something really, really pains you, you're going to bring yourself to tears very quickly. Now, some are more emotional than others. Some are more sensitive. Some, as soon as they see a picture, you know, they're moved to tears. Some people are just more emotional. Some people are harder. They have a thick shell. And it takes them longer, but still, if something really pains you, it bothers you, you'll bring yourself to tears. So that is basically what he said. When it comes to prayers, we have a tradition that any prayer that has been said with tears, not crocodile tears, but real tears from the bottom of one's heart, it's not wasted. Hashem puts it aside, and whenever the right time comes, He will listen to it, and He will grant our wishes as long as that wish or request is reasonable. If you cry to Hashem that you want to win the lottery, I don't think it's going to go anywhere, even if you cry buckets of tears. It won't help. Maybe it's not good for you. Who says that winning the lottery is good for you? Hashem knows what's good for us. And if something is good for us and we really ask it of Him, and with tears, our chances are 100 times better than if it's just a plain prayer. That is how powerful tears are. Never give up hope, of course, even if somebody cries and prays every day. Continue to pray. Because it could be Hashem says, I want him to pray 150 days. We don't know. Continue to pray. Never give up hope. Another very powerful Segulot that is a Segulot of a prayer kind is to pray for others who need to get married too. You know somebody who's single, and you are single yourself. Hashem, that young man, young woman needs a shidduch, needs a zivug. Please help them. Hashem says, wow, he's so kind. He's praying, using all his time in the prayer to focus on his friend, and he needs the exact same thing. I will answer his prayers too, for himself. So in other words, if we think of others who are in need of something, parnasa, livelihood, shidduchim, health, whatever it is, and you need that exact same thing for yourself, then your prayer will not only help that individual, it will help you too. So that is a very powerful segula to have one's prayers answered. Remember, if that's all that is missing, is a true, sincere prayer. Now I have a surprise for you. Even though some people may feel that they don't have too many merits, they're not very religious, they haven't done too many ma'asim tovim, too many good deeds in their life. And Hashem, why should He listen to me? That may be a reaction or an attitude that some may have. We are told that one should not think about it. Because if your prayer is sincere, Hashem listens anyway. There are certain acts, I will admit, there are certain acts where the Rabbi tells, Gam tfilato to'eva, his prayer is an abomination. The man's prayer is totally unacceptable because of certain acts that are totally unaccepted upstairs. They turn away completely from him. But I'm not talking about those terrible acts. Otherwise, even if a person grew up not knowing too much about Judaism, he did not observe so much, does not know too much Torah, he's not a big tzaddik. But if he prays, that prayer is still effective. It can still be effective. There are various Mizmoret Tehillim to say. I did not put together the entire list today. If you're interested, I can share it with you another time. But one of the most important chapters is Kuf Yutet, 119. 119 is that chapter in Tehillim that has all the letters of the Aleph Bet. So you can read the Pesukim that have your name and your mother's name. Just like we do for somebody who's sick, the same can be done for somebody who's looking for a soulmate. Is on a regular basis, or at least once a week, whenever you can, to read the chapter 119, read the Pesukim of your name and your mother's name. So, for example, if your name is Moshe, you're going to read the Pesukim Mem, the Pesukim that start with Shin, the Pesukim that start with Hey, and then you're going to go to the name of your mother, right? Whatever, your mother's name. No, you don't need the bet, no. You're going to say, if her name is Rivka, you're going to read the Pesukim with Resh, Bet, Kuf, Hey. Okay, that's chapter 119. Just want to finish up with a couple stories that hopefully will impress upon you that more than all the Segulot that you may have heard, the most important of all is prayer. There was once an individual who was very, very sick and was very concerned about his situation. He couldn't get any help where he was, and he went to his rabbi. Rabbi, what do I do? Can you help me, please? So the rabbi said, you know what, go to the city of Onipoli and seek out the professor there, the famous doctor of Onipoli, and he will help you, B'ezrat Hashem. He traveled a long distance until he came to this village. It turned out to be a small town, a village called Onipoli. And he goes to the townspeople and asks them, where's the professor, the doctor in this town? He says, this is a small little village. There is no doctor here. So the guy was confused. He says, what do you do when you're sick? He says, we don't go to doctors, we just turn to God. We have no doctors. So he's confused. He goes back to the rabbi. Rabbi, why did you make me go to the Onipoli? There are no doctors there. There's no professor there. He says, you fool. Did you ask them what they do when they are sick? He says, yes, they told me that they pray to God. He says, that's exactly what I want you to do. He says, what do you come to me? Why are you so concerned, giving up hope that you can't find help? Turn to the doctor of all doctors. He helps everybody. He's the main one. Another story, very similar story, of a couple who did not have children, who came to the rabbi. And many tzaddikim rabbis, in order to allow for the prayer to be more effective, what they would do is they would ask for a pidyon. For those of you who do not know what the word pidyon means, it means to redeem. In other words, you give tzedakah, and that tzedakah acts as a pidyon to redeem you from whatever sins you may have had that may act as accusations against you. So the rabbi says, okay, I will pray for you, but I want a pidyon of 500 rubles. 500 rubles is a lot of money. But sometimes when you give a lot to tzedakah, it leaves a very powerful impression upstairs. He did not spend it on himself, all that money. He could have bought himself a new car. And instead, he gave it as a pidyon. That is very, very powerful. So the rabbi asked for a pidyon for 500. So they were confused. 500, that's so much money. So they started negotiating with him. Rabbi, will you accept 250? And they were not Persian. Yeah. They started negotiating. Rabbi, would you take 100? They tried to lower the price. No, 500, nothing less, not a penny less. Rabbi, how about 350? negotiation. Nothing helped. What do you think happened next? The woman tells her husband, forget the rabbi. We'll just pray to Hashem, and we don't need his help. We don't need his favors. The rabbi turns to them and he says, that's exactly what I wanted to hear from you. The only reason I have put such an expensive price tag on this prayer is because I knew you were relying and depending on me. I want you to rely and depend on Hashem. You think I can help you? I can't help you without him helping you. A lot of people have this idea that the rabbi, that is the Segulot, that's shtuyot. That's not the ikar. The ikar, the most important thing, is turning to him. He wants to hear our prayers. He wants us to turn to him. He wants us to remember him. Sometimes he holds something back just because of that reason alone. Sometimes that's all he wants. Pray to me and you will see you don't need anything else. And last but not least, I want to remind those who are very, very picky. I need to share with you another story that it doesn't help at all. And I want to share with you a story that happened with my cousin. A cousin of mine in Israel who was already over 30, nice looking woman, professional, successful. She had all the ma'alot, all the good qualities. Everybody was becoming very concerned about her because she wasn't getting married. And they were concerned, because at a certain age, after a while, it becomes more difficult to have children. And they thought that her problem was that she was very, very picky. Even though now, Baruch Hashem, she's married, I found out what had happened. It was a whole story that the Baba Sali, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, revealed to her father what was causing the delay. It was an incredible story that perhaps I'll mention it another time. But she did appear a little bit picky in the beginning. Why? Because she said, I don't want anybody who's fat, I don't want anybody who wears glasses, and I don't want a chutznik. A chutznik means somebody who's not Israeli, somebody outside of Israel. No glasses, no fat, and no chutznik. And she got all three. She married somebody from England who was heavy at the time. I think he's lost weight since then. And he has glasses, big deal. So remember what I told her in the very beginning? Well, these things don't mean a lot. Right? Now, obviously, too heavy is not good either, But you have to be open-minded. You have to be open-minded. It could be that your zivug has all of the above. Anyway, David HaMelech tells us, Panal tfilat ha'arar velo bazai tefilato. David HaMelech reminds us, and this is brought down in Tanat Ve'Eliyahu. Eliyahu Navi reveals to us in his Sefer Tanat Ve'Eliyahu that Kadosh Baruch Hu listens to everyone's prayers, regardless of his situation. Panal tfilat ha'arar means that Hashem turns to that single cactus, that single tree that grows in the desert, that is all by itself. Velo bazai tfilato, he does not despise, he does not turn away from his prayer. Even though somebody's by himself in the desert, he has nothing to his name, no credits, no mitzvot, no zechuyot. Velo bazai tfilato, Hashem does not despise anyone's prayer. So more than anything else, what I would hope that all the singles take with them tonight is the power of prayer. I'm 100% convinced, I have no doubts in the world, that if the prayer is done properly, B'ezrat Hashem, your prayers will be answered. Thank you very much.